the thieves, as the Texians are called, into the open so he can find out how many men he has against him. But Houston wisely keeps most of his army hidden from view.
I couldn't get in it. I think that Realizing that he cannot draw the Texians into a general engagement with his artillery, Santa Anna orders skirmishers from the Toluca battalion to advance within musket range of the left wing of the Texian camp. All afternoon, the two sides exchange volleys. Solid shot from the gold standard and the showers of broken horseshoes from the twin sisters fly back and forth across the open plain. But since the firing was at long range, only Colonel James Neal, commander of the Texian artillery, was wounded on the Texian side, and a soldado was wounded on the Mexican side. But they are only the first of many to come. During the exchange of rifle and artillery fire, a Mexican musket ball clips one of the bridle reins of Houston's horse, but he is unharmed. Late in the afternoon, Santa Anna concedes that he cannot draw the Texians out of the woods. He orders the skirmishers and the Golden Standard to retire, but Colonel Delgado finds himself without infantry protection, and he fears that the Texian cavalry will come after him. When Colonel Sherman sees the Mexican infantry retire, he petitions Houston to let him capture the Golden Standard. Houston refuses, as he does not want to provoke a battle this day, but he tells Sherman he can reconnoiter the Mexican camp. Delgado's fears are realized as Sherman's men ride toward him hoping to capture the worried Delgado and his cannon. But the Mexican cavalry, under Captain Miguel Aguirre, gallantly rides in to protect the slowly withdrawing cannon, and a heated skirmish ensues. The riders swirl around each other as each man tries to gain the advantage over his opponent. At first, the caballeros are driven back. Then, the Mexicans must halt to reload their muskets, and the fight renews as the Mexican cavalry counterattack. During the fray, Private Mirabeau Lamar, in an act of heroism, saves the life of Walter Lane, who was dismounted in the fight. The rebels fall back in confusion, narrowly escaping disaster. One Mexican and 2 Texians are wounded, but one of the Texians, Owen Trask, dies later of his wound. The Mexican cavalry does not pursue the retreating Texans, but halts and salutes the bravery of Lamar. As the Texians withdraw, Houston sends infantry to cover the cavalry's retreat, and Santa Anna sends infantry to help drive the Texians away. A small infantry battle ensues as the Texians and Fusileros fire at each other at long range. Once again, no one is hit, and as the day draws to a close, both sides retire to their respective camps. The encounter of April 20th, 1836 is over. If there is a victor, it is Houston, who narrowly avoids the general engagement that Santa Anna desired. As darkness spreads across the now silent plain of San Jacinto, the contenders of this land we call Texas retire for a long, restless night. Houston orders his men to eat and rest, but he remains awake. He is worried. He faces a foe comparable in numbers but superior in training. His men are filled with frustration, and Houston knows he cannot keep them in check much longer. He knows that the time has come, and he must fight. Mexican reinforcements could arrive at any time. In the Mexican camp, Santa Anna also spends a restless night. He knows that he's probably outnumbered and fears that the rebel mob might attack at any time. To strengthen his defenses, he orders his soldados to construct a barricade made of everything they can find: wooden barrels, camp furniture, crates, logs, bags filled with beans and supplies. That night, Santa Anna orders his men to sleep in battle formation with their muskets at their sides, and sentries watch the Texan camp all night. In the early hours of April 21st, 1836, Santa Anna, fearing a dawn attack, orders the soldados who were already tired to stand in line of battle. If Houston had attacked at dawn, the Battle of San Jacinto might have been a Mexican victory. Santa Anna's army is patterned after Napoleon's Grand Army of France, but his troops are an assortment of men unequal in training and desire. Some are dedicated professionals who follow their leader without question. Some are patriots, fighting for Mexico's national honor. Some are devout Catholics defending the church, but others are conscripts of doubtful motivation. All are homesick and exhausted from the long winter march across the hundreds of miles of desert and wilderness. In the Texan camp, the men of the Texan army do not get much sleep either. Most of them stay up waiting for dawn. Some ponder the prospects of suffering the same fate as the victims of the Alamo and Goliad. Some think of loved ones at home. But we can be sure that they know that this new day will bring either victory or defeat, and that their lives are in the hands of a man many of them think lacks the courage to fight. That man is Sam Houston. We do not know his secret thoughts during that gloomy night, but he must have felt the heavy burden of responsibility for the men under his command, the fleeing refugees, and the fate of Texas. He must have known that day would be the greatest battle of his life. About 9 o'clock in the morning, just as Houston fears, General Martin Perfecto de Cos, Santa Anna's brother-in-law, arrives with 400 troops who march all night on muddy roads from Rosenberg. But he brings militia instead of well-trained veterans, and the men are exhausted. While walking along on the prairie in advance of the Texan camp, Houston sees the Mexican reinforcements arrive. Now the situation for Houston suddenly becomes very critical. To prevent the arrival of more Mexican reinforcements, Houston sends a small party under Erastus Deaf Smith, a trusted scout, to burn the bridge across Vince's Bayou, which Coss and Houston crossed to reach San Jacinto. Houston tells Smith to hurry back or he will miss the fighting. In the Mexican camp, Santa Anna is convinced that the rebels will not attack now that General Coss and his reinforcements have arrived. He relaxes his vigilance. In the Texian camp, about noon, Houston calls his first and only council of war with his officers. He listens to their opinions about whether to attack or defend, but Houston keeps his thoughts to himself. Finally, about 3 o'clock, Houston makes his decision. He orders his army of Johnny-come-latelys and angry rebellious nationals to fall into parade formation and inspects the companies. He polls his officers about the men's willingness to fight. At 4 o'clock, he orders the line of battle to form. Colonel Sherman's volunteer infantry forms on the Texian left flank. To his right is Colonel Edward Burleson's regiment, the backbone of the army. Next to Burleson's are the twin sisters commanded by Colonel George Hockley. On the far right is the cavalry, commanded by the newly promoted Colonel Lamar. The Army's only flag is carried by a lieutenant from Tennessee and bears the image of a bare-breasted Lady Liberty. In the Mexican camp, rifles are stacked. The troops are sleeping, eating, or otherwise at ease. General Coss's men are camped way out on the Mexican right, still exhausted from their overnight march. Santa Anna is in his tent, confident of his superiority. And the Mexican cavalry, after diligently watching the Texian camp all day, in case the land thieves should come out of hiding, is allowed to retire to feed their horses. But no one replaces them. Not a single Mexican sentry is present to see the Texians advance. In the attack that is about to unfold, Sherman, the Texan left, will steal up on Coss's unsuspecting militia and surprise them. Lamar's cavalry will cut off any escape. The main body of the army, led by Burleson and Houston, will make a frontal attack on the Mexican barricade, and the twin sisters will open deadly fire on Santa Anna's camp. At that moment, Houston will halt his line and order his men to fire. A small band of fife and drummers will play a slightly bawdy Irish tune, "Will You Come to the Bower?" Houston's men will raise the battle cry, "Remember the Alamo, remember Goliad," and charge as Deaf Smith rides among them shouting, "Fight for your lives, Vince's bridge is down. Their date with destiny has arrived." In Santa Anna's camp, the startled soldados will rally to defend the barricade under the noble General Castrillon, but this small group of brave soldados, caught by surprise due to Santa Anna's complacency, is no match for the revenge-bent Texians. Castrillon will try to stop the rout, but it is futile, and he dies defending the golden standard.
One guy, he's wavering. He's wavering.
Sit down.